Thank you very much. Andrew, fetch the dogs. Actually, we thought of having some sort of talent contest today with flashing lights and people breaking into songs spontaneously. But we're a political party, so we have a conference. Chair, conference, fellow Social Democrats. A few weeks ago, I was up in Caithness at Dounreay Nuclear Facility, and I was filming a little clip for social media. It's now decommissioned, but that was built from 1955 during Britain's post-war nuclear expansion, it comprised of 19 nuclear power stations and 41 reactors. We pioneered nuclear power. Now we have an energy crisis and we're importing gas to keep the lights on. 1955, that was 10 years before I was born, but the state built over 200,000 homes that year. Do you know how many it builds each year now? Less than 5,000. Almost everywhere you look, transportation, power, housing, you see a collapse in state capacity. British governments can tax and regulate, but they can't build. Why? Quote, a constant theme of SDP thinking is that most of our difficulties have cultural roots, and if nothing can be done about cultural causes, then nothing could be done about anything else. At the heart of this cultural question, is the concept of investment, the ability to forgo something today for a better tomorrow. That's the nature of it, to put something aside and actually build. But at some stage, our political elites stopped doing this. Instead of planning for the future and building stuff, they left things to chance. And instead of building national assets, they started selling them, usually to foreign interests. And the opinions of our ruling class became detached from reality. Their instincts were wrong. Blair and Brown's instinct was that Britain was too poor to maintain its nuclear power stations. So, as the Thatcherites they are, they sold them to the French. But at the same time, they thought Britain rich enough to wage foolish foreign wars, costing an estimated 75 billion, hundreds of British lives and thousands of others. I think that's not merely poor judgment, it's imbecilic to do that. And the public relations experts that followed them were no better. Neither Cameron nor Osborne twigged that if the cost of government borrowing is 1%, and the yield on new homes is 3%, that it actually costs you not to build these homes. And if you care about the country and you care about its people, you should build those homes. You should build them, that is, unless you care about donations from the private house builders to the Tory party even more, which is what happened. The present challenges on housing are slightly different, but the short-termism remains. We spend 35 billion a year on housing benefit and about 12 billion building homes. And that should be literally the other way around. Rent subsidy exists because rents are deemed too high, but they won't build the homes that would make rents lower. Do you see my point? That's the point, and it's a failure to invest which is at the heart of the problem. There aren't many good equations in economics, but there is one that is my favorite, which is a very basic one, which is savings equals investment equals future prosperity. It's very, very simple, and it's true of individuals, and it's true of households, and it's true of nations as well. Investment causes prosperity, and failure to invest causes beggary and debt. And every year now, our government spends more than it receives in tax revenue, and national debt rises. In fact, we're actually borrowing to pay interest now. We're living on borrowed time, on borrowed money. But we're not alone. The United States is actually in an even worse position than us, but they do have growth. France is in dire straits. Now, some people view this as some sort of consolation because all the countries in the West are in the same boat. You know, they see the sovereign debt markets as sort of ugly baby contest. But to me, it's no consolation. You've got to look after yourselves. To me, it brings to mind that scene in Fargo when Steve Buscemi says, it's covered in blood, and he says, you should have seen the other guy. You know, I don't know if you've ever seen that. But that's what it's like. That's what it's like. Borrowing to invest is actually perfectly sensible. In fact, this is what this conference is actually about. But borrowing to consume more than you've produced is not. As we said before, debt-fueled consumption is not prosperity. It's a form of instant gratification, and it's self-defeating. It's jam today and nothing tomorrow. I think Gene Farmer was correct in attributing the global financial crisis to a primary cause, the tendency of people to think there's more on the table than there actually is. Excessive leverage and financial engineering was used to squeeze out money that wasn't actually there. And our politicians today are using debt in exactly the same way, to spend what actually isn't there. Major problem. We need to elect leaders who grasp the basics of fundamental economics and good governance. There are some things that this country can't afford. Wars of choice, open borders, the triple lock, migrant hotels, DEI spending, BMWs for PIP claimants. All of those things we cannot afford. You should not be better off on welfare than if you work full-time on the minimum wage. And yet, millions are. Untenable. Quote, it's impossible to live pleasantly without living prudently. That's Epicurus, my favorite Greek philosopher. You don't get this with the other parties, you know. And he's right. Actually, a little bit of prudence would be helpful. The first budget surplus would start to heal the debt problem. And any surplus run by any level of government would also help. And history shows it can be done. In 1933, Sweden had a fiscal deficit of 11%. The Social Democratic government, led by Göran Persson, dealt with it head-on. State benefits were cut, taxes were raised, and there was a strong drive to make people work. Result? Sweden halved its debt ratio in 10 years. They fixed it, and they fixed it by observing the cardinal rule. Everyone must play their part. Persson remarked years later, everybody must suffer pain together, otherwise the reforms will fall apart. And I think that's right, and it's a precondition, and we're going to have to do the same thing. But on this side of the North Sea, we have leaders that underpay their taxes. Major problem. Quote, any position in public life should mean holding the highest standards of ethics and integrity. Anyone? Who said that? Who didn't? Angela Rayner. Yeah, Angela Rayner. Of course. Labour has a huge parliamentary majority. It's massive. But they can't do the most basic welfare reform that we need. And that is a real problem. And my point is, under Labour, because of its culture, I see no sign of a correction. The markets may see things a little bit differently. I want to turn finally to the most challenging problem I think we face today, which is that of social solidarity, major issue. Earlier this year I went back to Australia, I haven't been for a few years, and I drove from Queensland through New South Wales right down to Victoria, over 2,000 kilometres. And the landscapes just are magnificent. You've got Darling Downs, Great Dividing Range, Northern Tablelands, fantastic. And so are the country towns. You've got Guyra, Armidale, Gilgandra I went through, fantastic, wonderful. I travelled through Australian landscapes, but I also travelled through what is recognisably and inescapably Anglo-Western civilization. And when I see it, when I see its churches, its RSL clubs, and its cricket ovals, I see shared memories and shared achievements. And I see the imprint of the culture from which it came, our own civilization. And I mention civilization because it's central to what this nation is. And its maintenance is critical to our sense of safety and belonging. Quote, "My country became great because of what we inherited from you." Charlie Kirk. Very well done. The progressives who have imposed a huge cultural change throughout the West have done so on some very, very flaky grounds. It's an experiment laden with infantile assumptions. It's assumed that our societies can hold together in peace without the foundation of a common culture of any kind. It's assumed that diversity is our strength. It's assumed that people from backward and misogynistic cultures, on settling on the magic soil of Europe, will shed these characteristics. It's assumed that corruption does not migrate. It surely does. It's assumed that dividing society into hostile camps of white oppressors and minority victims won't seed conflict. It's assumed that disprivileging white people, especially white men, in employment opportunities and government funding won't cause a reaction. And it's assumed that importing many who are clearly hostile to our culture will have no adverse consequences. It's assumed that denigrating and misrepresenting British history can be done comprehensively and with impunity, and actually, in many of our institutions, with encouragement. And it's assumed that gaslighting the public about rape gangs and the true nature of interracial violence is justified because we're the good people and it's the right thing to do. And it's assumed that David Betts is wrong. The question is begged, in my view, can a society which is subjected to all of this avoid a descent into civil conflict and Volkish ethnic nationalism? The progressives seem determined to test this question out. Because that's the elite belief system. And never have such beliefs enjoyed such a high reputation on such weak foundations. As political theory, it's literally at the Fotherington Thomas level. Hello clouds, hello sky. It's utterly detached from reality. To adopt a line from our New Green Paper, liberal elites have traded our security for their own self-righteousness. So what to do? What's the intelligent response to the gift the liberals have given? Well, we can stop pouring petrol on the fire. We can get a national border worthy of the name. And we can recognize the Channel migrant crisis for what it is, an invasion. Offshore detention on Ascension Island for every illegal migrant would stop the flow. They can have the policy if they like. And we need to end our addiction to mass immigration for both cultural and economic reasons. We need to deport illegal migrants and foreign criminals, all of them, because that's what the rule of law actually means. But we also need to ask, and this is important, we need to ask those demanding remigration, which is a current theme, what they want and what they actually mean. The voluntary return of the unhappy or the unassimilable is sensible. But if they mean the summary suspension of civil rights, the arbitrary removal of British nationality, and forced deportation, then we're bound to say that these are not things which could be part of any social democratic program at all. That is actually more of a sort of Idi Amin type response, to be honest. We need an elite class which is a proper elite, one which is prepared to defend our form of Western civilization and set the cultural tone, finally, in line with the cultural majority. Putting English flags on lampposts is not merely a demand for recognition, although it is that. It's a justified revolution against the disprivileging of the majority. And remember, the majority is most of us, as every Democrat knows. To conclude, the roots of our problems are cultural, but there are solutions to be had in every domain. The remedies are plain to see: investment, building, and future orientation. And strength, a little firmness of mind, the power of saying no, which is the first of the useful virtues. And confidence, confidence in our own civilization, what it has created and what it is still capable of. It's not an accident that people from around the world clamor to be here. It's because here, for the moment, is better. And we should know that. I want to end with the words of the Orcadian Samuel Lang, who wrote this in 1844. No society ever yet perished that had the will to save itself. And I think that's the question. And I think our future depends on the right plans and on the right people. And the plans are made and the people are here. Thank you.